There we go. Good evening. Why does this look like it's not syncing? Hmm. All right. Well, hopefully it all works itself out. Again, good evening and welcome to Life After 55 Health, Wealth, and Headlines. I'm Roy, and I'm really glad that you are here tonight. I want to say something right up front. Whether you're watching this live, which, if you are, today is January 20th. This is take two of this stream because the first one I messed up really, really bad. Um, okay, and I'm looking this time at my mic monitor. So to make sure, because last time I muted the mic for like half of the episode, which is why I'm doing this again, which is take two. But anyways, it is January 20th, 2026. And if you are watching this live, or if you're catching this on the replay tomorrow or stumbling across this weeks from today, you're exactly who this show is for. This is only our second live stream. Actually, now it's the third, but it is technically the second. The only reason it's the third is because I messed the second one up. So I'm redoing the second one. Anyways, it's our second live stream and the channel is still growing. So please bear with me. This is not about flashy production or hype, at least not yet, not till I get the hang of this. And it's about slowing things down a little bit and talking honestly about what changes after 55 physically, financially, and mentally. All right. Tonight, we are going to cover three areas that affect almost everyone in this stage of life: mental clarity and brain fog, costly tax mistakes many seniors make without realizing it. And we're also going to talk about a recent headline about a new senior tax deduction that could impact millions of Americans over 65. Okay. No scare tactics, no complicated jargon, just plain English conversation, mono e mono, or whatever that saying is. So, before we get started, I want to take just a moment for a quick disclaimer. Now, here is where I messed it up in the first try of doing this tonight. So, I'm going to try it again this time. This is where I muted for like 20 minutes. Okay. But the first thing I want to do is I want to take a moment for a quick disclaimer. So, let me get that up. Okay. Then I am going to. So, let's get rid of this. And I hope I'm still not muted. I don't think I am. I'm looking at the little monitor thingy down there, and I don't feel that I am. I don't think I'm still. Um, okay, so we're gonna take that out. All right, so that's gone. So we did the disclaimer. And again, I am hoping that I haven't screwed this up again like I did last time because all of this that you're hearing now was muted last time, last go around. All right. So let's get it rolling. Tonight, let's start with health because that's how I like to start these. I like to go the way the show is named: health, wealth, and headlines. Those are the three segments we cover in these episodes, and we try to stay in that order, or I try to stay in that order. Okay. So, um, something I hear people talk about all the time, but rarely get clear answers on is brain fog. Um, so what I wanted to do in this episode is talk about what is normal when it comes to brain fog and what can help. Um, if you are over 55 and you've ever walked into a room and forgotten why you were there, or you've struggled to find the right word mid sentence, or you've felt mentally slower than you used to, I want you to hear what I'm about to say very clearly. Those things alone do not mean something is seriously wrong with you. Okay. Today, let's talk about what brain fog after 55 really means, what is normal, what should get your attention, and what can actually help. Okay. Now, when people say brain fog, they're usually describing things like trouble concentrating, forgetting names or words, um, feeling mentally tired faster. It's another one. The feeling not as sharp as they used to be. Well, here's something important: brain fog is not a medical diagnosis, it is a description. It's like saying, I don't feel well. And that's good news because descriptions leave room for improvement. Aging does change the brain, but it doesn't do it in the scary way that a lot of people assume it does. One normal change is slower recall. Now, you still remember things, it just takes longer to retrieve the memory. Okay. And that is not memory loss, that's retrieval speed. Um, on that subject, I just want to talk about a quick aside here. I looked at a study earlier today that talked about the amount of information. Actually, I looked this up, and it was in a study that I read. Um, but the amount of information that the average person takes in today is between 34 and 74 gigabytes of information, and that includes like advertisements you see, people talking on the radio, people talking on TV, people talking in YouTube videos, people talking at work, people talking on the phone. Things that you see, images you see, all those things combined is between 34 and 74 gigabytes a day, which equates to, according to this study, that's like processing 16 movies in a day. Okay, when you think about that, that's a lot of info you're taking in. Now, granted, you just see things like, for example, if you're in a city passing by a billboard, you see the message, but you don't necessarily store that away in your head somewhere. But the point is, all your life you've been doing that, and there are tons of things in your brain, um, which again, there's more stuff that your brain has to sort through to find what it is you're looking for. You know what I mean? I mean, that's how I see it. And a lot of people say that multitasking also gets harder. And honestly, that's your brain being selective, not broken. Um, Mental fatigue happens faster because your brain simply uses more energy for the same tasks that it needed when you were 35 or 40. Now, none of that means you're losing intelligence or value. It just means your brain wants a different pace right now. So, again, think about it for a second. Like I just said about the enormous amount of information every day. I often picture your brain like a huge warehouse, okay? Um, and just imagine like a giant warehouse filled with row after row after row after row of filing cabinets. Each one of those filing cabinets has like your memories or whatever stashed away in, stacked away, filed away in each of those file cabinets. Okay. You want to remember something, you have to walk down these rows, find the right file cabinet. See, I'm having a senior moment as we speak. Um, excuse me. You have to find the right file cabinet to get the information, the specific information that you're looking for, and then you get it and you roll with it. But again, there's so much information tucked away up there. Um, it's not that the information is gone. It's just that it takes a little bit longer to walk down the aisles and to find the right filing cabinet. So that's not memory loss. That's retrieval speed. Okay. So when I talk to people about this subject, I just say, I tell them what I just told you. I don't think it's memory loss per se. It's retrieval speed. It takes you a little bit longer, to get to what you're looking for inside your mind here. All right, now there are some things that are not typical aging as far as your memory, brain fog, and all that goes. Getting like for example, getting lost in a familiar place. If say you go to the pretty much the same grocery store every week, and suddenly you go to the grocery store and you don't realize where you are. Another one, something a red flag that you should worry about is repeatedly asking the same questions. Um, Another one is confusion about people or time. When any of those things are happening, that's when you need to involve a healthcare professional and perhaps get some testing or whatever they recommend, because those things are not normal after 55. That denotes a more serious condition or the onset of a more serious condition and should be checked out in my opinion. And again, I'm not a doctor. I'm just going by my own research, and what I've seen. My dad had Alzheimer's and died from Alzheimer's, complications from Alzheimer's. So I kind of feel somewhat qualified to talk about it at least. And again, I'm not saying I'm an expert because I am certainly not, but you know, I know what I watched with my dad. All right. And most people that are watching this, this is not what's happening. The warning things about being lost in the grocery store and stuff like that. That's not what most of you here are experiencing. Most of you here are dealing with brain fog, not brain disease. Okay. Now, there's also hope, and here's where hope comes in because many causes are modifiable. All right. Poor sleep is a big thing. If you're getting poor sleep, that's affecting your brain. That's one of the ways you can kind of alleviate some of your brain fog is to get better sleep, more consistent sleep. Chronic stress, this is another one. That's a big one. And stress hits a lot harder as we age. The older we get, the harder that hits us. Now, if you've followed any of the videos I've done in the past, I've talked about stress in many of those videos for all different conditions. Um, and what I talked about was the harmful effects stress has on you, no matter if you're 30, 40, 50, 60. And yes, it gets progressively worse the older you get, but stress is definitely a big no-no as far as I'm concerned. if you can alleviate stress, and I know that's easier said than done, but getting rid of stress um, is going to help you more than you can imagine. All right. Another thing is blood sugar swings, even without diabetes, that it causes mental fatigue. You know, another thing is low grade inflammation that increases with age and it affects your focus. Medications is another thing. Even very common medications often have brain fog as a side effect that no one warns you about. And none of this means you're failing. What it does mean is your body is asking for adjustment, not panic. All right. So, what can help? Well, again, the goal here is not to be 30 again. The goal is clarity. Like I mentioned a minute ago, sleep consistency helps more than perfect sleep. Hydration, that's another big thing. And I'm guilty of this, more so probably than the next guy is. Um, Hydration is a big for a lot of things. It helps with inflammation. It helps with, just a wide variety of things that start going wrong with us as we age. Gentle movement, if you're sedentary like I am, you need to get up and move. You need to do something, exercise. And I'm not saying go out and run a marathon or anything like that or a triathlon or whatever. Just do what you can, just even simple, walking around the house if you're not very mobile, even little things like rocking on your heels and your toes back and forth, stretching, just something to get your circulation going. That helps your focus. And then one another big thing is try and reduce mental clutter. If you've got the TV on, the radio on, somebody I knew, and I'm not going to mention any names or relations or anything, but somebody I knew had a TV in every single room of their house. And I swear every TV was on all the time because if that person walked from this room to that room, they couldn't be without the TV being on. To me, it was ridiculous, but that's just the way I guess some people are. But that's all mental clutter, and I just I don't know, personally I didn't get it, but I guess some people need to be distracted like that. And the fact of the matter is the fewer distractions helps the brain breathe again. All right? So small changes, they make a big difference and they compound over time. You know, one thing to keep in mind is this stage of life is not about speed anymore. Now's the time where it's about wisdom, discernment, and peace. Clarity doesn't just disappear after 55. It just shows up differently. Okay? All right. I am looking at the clock over there to see where I'm at. And so far, so good. And I believe the microphone is still on. So far, we're good, I think. Okay. Now, just before we get into that, if you are watching this live, which I don't think anybody is, but if somebody does come along live, um, and you have a question, feel free to interact in the chat. I will be more than happy to answer and interact with you. That's what it's there for. Okay. All right. Now, let me move on. Um, all right. So it's time to shift gears now because one of the biggest contributors to stress, which again is very harmful to us, and brain fog after 55 is not health at all. It's money issues. Okay. And one of those money issues is taxes. So let's move into the wealth segment and talk about three costly tax mistakes that seniors make many times, most of the time, I would say, without even realizing it, and how they can avoid them. All right, let me just take a sip of my coffee here and we'll get right into it. All right, so now shifting into the wealth side of this conversation. I just want to say this up front. When I talk about tax mistakes, I'm not talking about people doing anything wrong or illegal. What I am talking about is good, honest people who did what they were told their entire lives. In other words, they worked hard, they saved what they could, and then they get surprised by taxes after retirement. These are mistakes that I see all the time, especially after 55. So let's walk through three of the biggest ones. And by the way, for those of you who may be new here, my regular 9 to 5 is I am a bookkeeper and I do taxes for people and for small businesses, actually, mainly for small businesses. So, I think I'm somewhat qualified to talk about taxes and that sort of thing. I am an approved IRS approved filer, income tax preparer slash filer, whatever. So, I'm not claiming I'm an expert on taxes, but I at least know my way around a tax form or two. Excuse me. So, all right. So let's talk about, like I said, the biggest mistakes. And I think I mentioned in the title or in the description of this that there's three mistakes. So that's what we're going to talk about. And mistake number one is a lot of people that I see assume lower income automatically means their taxes are going to be lower. Okay. And that is not necessarily the case. And again, just because your income goes down doesn't mean your taxes automatically go down too. Unfortunately, that's just not how it works. So, depending on your total income, a portion of your Social Security can become taxable, especially when it's combined with other income. Most people are never clearly told that. Pensions, withdrawals, part time income, all of those things stack together. And in the context of senior taxes, income stacked together means that the IRS looks at the total sum of all your different income sources to determine your tax bracket and whether your Social Security benefits will be taxed. Essentially, your income is not viewed in silos. Instead, it is layered like a stack. Social Security tax, is one part of that stack, or Social Security income, I should say, is one part of that stack. If you take withdrawals from IRAs or 401s or whatever, that's considered another part of that stack because that's treated as income. And, if you have a pension or something, that also is treated as income. And all of those things, the IRS stacks that. They don't do just a one lump sum silo thing. This is how much money you have. Um, and if that exceeds certain limits set by the IRS, you can get up to 50 or 85% of your Social Security taxed. Okay. It officially makes that much of your Social Security income taxable because the IRS doesn't care where the money came from. It doesn't care whether you got it from a part time job, whether you got it from your pension check or an IRA withdrawal. Every dollar that you add to that stack can potentially push the dollars above it into a higher tax bracket. Okay, then we have what's known as timing risks. Um, because these sources stack taking a large withdrawal from an account in the same year that you have part time wages, that can create an unnecessary surprise by accidentally triggering a much higher tax bill than if those income events happened in different years. Okay. So the core message is that assuming a lower overall retirement income automatically means lower taxes is a common mistake. It is the combination of these different income types that determines your actual tax liability. Tax brackets don't care where the money came from. All right. A lot of seniors are shocked when they find out that part of their Social Security is taxable, especially when it's combined with other income. And nobody ever explained that clearly. So they weren't planning wrong. They just weren't planning with all the information that was available to them. And, again, I don't put that on them because it's not something most people go out and look, and look to, hey, I'm looking for something interesting to read. Oh, let's read the latest, income tax things. That's not something most people look at. People like me look at that and um, we do that because that's what we do for a job or whatever. We stay up with that, and financial advisors and bankers and things like that do that. But the average person doesn't sit there and look into taxation and the newest tax changes and all that. So they're not told about all this stuff. So they don't know. Okay. This is not about being greedy or avoiding taxes. I'm trying to explain to you how to avoid unnecessary surprises. All right. Now, the second big mistake I see is taking money without considering the timing. Okay. And what that is that's not paying attention to when the money is taken. Not just how much, but when matters as well. Timing matters more after 55 than it ever did before 55. Okay. Now, one of the things that you may or may not be aware of, there's something called RMDs or required minimum distributions. And what those are, for those of you, I know a lot of you know what that is, but those of you who don't, I'm going to try to, just explain it in everyday language so we all are on the same page here. Um, but essentially, what that is, when you think about it in terms of the IRS, for years, they let you put money into your 401 or a traditional IRA without taxing that money. Okay, so now that you are older, believe me, they want their cut. So, an RMD, again, a required minimum distribution, is the minimum amount of money that you are legally required to withdraw from your retirement accounts every year so they can finally tax it. So again, the IRS, even though they let you go for years and years and years without taxing it, now comes a time when now it's time to, as they say, pay the piper. Okay, when does this start? Well, for most people, this payday begins when you reach the age of 73 or 75 if you were born in 1960 or later than that. Now, if you forget or if you decide not to take this money, the RMD, which is again the legally required money distribution or minimum distribution, I mean, the IRS can and will charge you a steep 25% penalty on the amount you were supposed to withdraw. Okay. So that is something to keep in mind. All right. Another thing is taking large withdrawals in 1 year. When you take a large sum of money at once, like say for example $50,000 for a home renovation, well, that's like stacking your income. The tax, it's what I call the tax bracket trap. Every dollar that you withdraw from a traditional 401 or IRA is treated as ordinary income. They treat it just like it's a regular paycheck. Now, if a large withdrawal pushes your total income for the year into a higher tax bracket, you won't just pay more tax. It's also going to trigger hidden costs, such as making up to 85% of your Social Security benefits taxable. It also increases your Medicare premium, or it can increase your Medicare premiums, known as an IRMAA surcharge. Pushing yourself into a higher tax bracket accidentally um, is what's happening here. Without, and again, most of the time, these are mistakes people do without even knowing it. And I've seen people do everything right for years, and then one poorly timed withdrawal creates a tax bill that they weren't expecting, and it kicks them in the rear end. It does a lot of times, most of the time. Now, this is not because they were reckless. It's because nobody ever sat down and explained how timing works. The bottom line is age 55 is what I consider a safety valve age for many retirees, but it requires careful timing to avoid mistakes. Generally, if you take money from your 401k before age 59 and a half, you pay a 10% penalty. However, if you leave your job in or after the year you turn 55, you can withdraw from that specific employer's 401k penalty free. Okay, so essentially, you need to time your withdrawals carefully after 55. This helps smooth out your taxes. Instead of waiting until age 73 and being forced to take huge, highly taxed RMDs, a lot of people choose to take smaller, strategic withdrawals between ages 55 and 72 to keep themselves in a lower tax bracket over the long run. Now, managing your withdrawals after 55 isn't just about having cash. It's about making sure you don't accidentally push yourself into a tax avalanche by taking too much in a single year. And, the key thing to remember here is after 55, the IRS doesn't just care how much you make, they care when you touch the money as well. All right. And last but not least, the the third mistake I see a lot of seniors make is they have no long-term tax strategy. This is what many consider, me included, to be the biggest mistake of all. And it's also the most common. Many seniors do not have a strategy for taxes. They just deal with them year by year. What I see a lot of is they just file returns without forward thinking. Filing taxes without a long-term plan is often called by a lot of financial people, it's known as the do nothing trap. For seniors, this year by year approach can lead to a tax avalanche where small, unmanaged issues eventually bury your retirement quality and legacy. Now, a lot of seniors assume that because current tax rates are historically low, they have time to relax. And that's not a good way to look at it. Tax rules and healthcare costs, they shift constantly. And without proactive planning, you may miss the chance to lock in current lower rates through strategies like small controlled Roth conversions, and things like that. Procrastination quietly narrows your options. It makes it harder to melt that avalanche snowball once larger taxes start compounding in reverse. And then the other thing I see is a lot of retirees lack what I call a decumulation strategy, which is a roadmap for how to access funds from multiple accounts. Okay. And by multiple accounts, I mean taxable accounts, tax deferred accounts, and tax free accounts. And by not doing, not having a roadmap for how to access those funds, you might accidentally withdraw too much from a tax deferred account, which will trigger a tax bracket trap that makes your Social Security benefits taxable and spikes your Medicare premiums. A well structured plan helps you stay in the lowest bracket possible by drawing from the most efficient income bucket every year. Now, another thing, that I think is I don't well, I don't think it's very good, and I'm trying to use a nice word, but I can't think of one off the top of my head, so I won't. I won't use any words. I'll just say this is another thing that's a big mistake, I think. And that's for people who have done well pretty much all their lives. They may have a business, they may have, the storage bins, they might own real estate, they might own, um, you know, um, I don't know, a mobile home park, a storage facility or something, they've built up a decent business of some kind or another. And now they're getting on in years and they have failed to establish an estate plan. And failing to do that often leads to your assets getting distributed by intestate state laws rather than your wishes, i.e., it's going to go through probate and they're going to do with it what they will. Um, you know, again, if you have a will, yes, but it's still going to not, it's not the same as having a decent plan. Your loved ones are going to face significant tax burdens and more than likely costly legal battles, you know and here's another thing a lot of people don't know that in most inherited accounts they don't get a step up in basis, which means your heirs must pay ordinary income tax on every single withdrawal that they make. There's also now a 10-year rule, which is a new IRS rule that requires most non spousal beneficiaries to fully deplete inherited accounts within 10 years, meaning you have to. So let's just say, for an example, you leave your son or your daughter $1 million. They have to deplete that account within 10 years. And guess what? They're going to pay dearly in taxes in so doing. Okay. That's going to push them into a higher tax bracket. Essentially, it's going to screw them, and the government's going to get a big chunk of that. Another thing is, just to me, I see what I consider people just pay taxes over and over instead of intentionally. And, without intentionality, and I don't know if that's a word, but I use it as a word. So if it is a word, great. If it's not, then I'm making this up. But, intentionality, without intentionality, meaning you're doing this on purpose, seniors are often paying taxes on the same wealth multiple times. And again, this all ties in with no long-term plan or nothing. Um, you're paying tax once as income when you initially get it. Then if you do any kind of investing with it, you're paying on the investment gains that you get. You're being taxed on those. And then finally, as you pass, it's going to be taxed as estate or inheritance taxes, which are going to pass on to your heirs, whoever you leave that to. So the government's taken a bite out of the apple three times. Um, I just I don't, I just think people should plan better. And again, I'm not faulting anybody specifically because most people are not told any of this stuff. Um, you can significantly deplete your estate's value by not having an effective tax plan. And, again, I'm not telling anybody to cheat or, not pay your taxes. That's not what I'm advocating at all. What I'm saying is there are plans, go to any financial planner, advisor, or whatever. They will tell you there are, effective plans for you to save as much as you possibly can on your income tax. Um, and that's, effective tax avoidance. And effective tax avoidance strategies like you can do things like gifting. You can give up to 17,000 per person. Anybody you can give a gift to, and that offsets your tax liability. Um, most a lot of people do that with family members. They'll gift their son, their daughter, their whatever, 15,000, whatever, 10,000, and again, this is if you have it and you don't want the government to get it all. And it's perfectly legal, or you could set up a trust that can transfer assets tax free while you are still alive. This too will reduce the size of your taxable estate, and it's going to preserve more wealth for your surviving family. And a lot of people think, tax planning is only for the wealthy, and that's just simply not true. You know, um, Paying taxes is unavoidable. It is. Uh, and again, I am not advocating doing anything illegal, and I'm not advocating that you do not pay your taxes. I am saying, yes, do pay your taxes. You have to pay your taxes, and you should pay your taxes. But paying more than you need to is not, you know, is you know, is you just don't have to pay more than you need to if you know what you're doing or get the right advice from a financial advisor, from a tax person, from whoever you trust to give you the right advice. Wealthy families, just essentially just learned something earlier than most people did, and that is that planning beats reacting. Okay. Now, with all that said, I want to add something to this. This is exactly why I am in the process right now, as we speak, of developing a new course. I want to show you how to continue building wealth even at this stage of life, and um, more importantly, how to pass it on to your heirs intentionally. And, the course I'm making or building, it's about ensuring that your legacy goes to your family without making the government a silent partner, in essence, because if you don't have a plan, don't know what you're doing, that is what's happening. The government is basically becoming a silent partner in your mobile home park, in your business, in um, your storage facility, in your real estate holdings. They're becoming a silent partner, whether you want them to or not. And they are taking a massive unnecessary cut if you don't have the proper plan in place. So, again, I am working on a course that teaches you how to, first of all, gather the wealth together, how to hang on to it, and how to pass it to your family, your heirs, or whoever you want to leave it to without the government stepping in and taking a huge bite of it. All right, so that's all I'm going to say on that right now because I'm not going to get into that tonight. But I am still building it, and I just wanted you to know um, this is where this channel is headed. This is where I want to try helping people down the road, not just with this course. I more than likely will be doing some other things down the road similar to that, um, and go from there. And if you are interested in said course, great. If you aren't, great. Whatever. If you want help and you want to learn how to, you know, keep more for your heirs without, the state stepping in and the federal the IRS stepping in and everything and just hacking whatever you had to shreds and leaving them nothing, or worse yet, leaving them with a bunch of stuff that's going to tax them. They have to deplete it in 10 years. It's going to put them in a higher tax bracket, and it's going to wind up breaking them or causing heartache and problems down the road. Again, the course that I'm working on alleviates that. That's the whole point of the course is like there are wealthy people that have been doing that for centuries and that's how they do it. And most people don't do that because they don't know how to do it. So, anyways, that's the course. And, it should be ready in a few more weeks. And when that happens, I will let everybody know. And if you were interested, great. If you aren't, that's fine too. Okay. So let's wrap things up tonight with a headline that's been getting a lot of attention, especially, among people in our age group, people over 65, 55. You may have seen or heard something about a new $6,000 senior tax deduction. And when people hear a number like that, the natural reaction is either, hey, that sounds great, or, all right, what's the catch? So let's slow this down and talk about what this actually means in plain English. Okay. The first thing to understand is what a deduction is, because headlines tend to blur that out a lot of times. And a deduction does not mean that you get $6,000 in cash. It means you may be able to reduce the amount of income that gets taxed, i.e., your taxable income. Whether that helps you and how much is going to depend entirely on your overall tax picture. A deduction only helps, uh, excuse me, if you are actually paying taxes to begin with. So, who can this help? Well, for some seniors, this deduction could be meaningful, very meaningful, especially those who have taxable retirement income, who are just over the standard deduction threshold, or who are on a fixed income but still paying federal income tax. For those folks, a $6,000 deduction could reduce their tax bill. It's not going to eliminate it, but it can certainly reduce it. And that's a good thing. Any relief helps these days. Would you not agree with that? All right. Now, who might this not benefit? And this is the part that doesn't always make the headlines. Some seniors may not benefit much or at all for that matter. For example, if your income is already below taxable levels, it's not going to help you. If your deductions already exceed your income, it's not going to help you. If your tax situation is driven more by timing than total income, that isn't going to help you. This deduction is not going to help you either. In those cases, this deduction sounds great on paper, but doesn't change much in reality. This doesn't mean that the deduction is bad. It just means it's not universal. Okay, so this is where everything we talked about earlier comes together. Headlines do not replace planning. A new deduction does not fix poor timing. And tax relief only works when it fits into a bigger picture. This is why reacting to headlines can actually cost people money, even when the news sounds positive. This is also why understanding long term strategies matters more than chasing yearly changes. Headlines change, good planning lasts. Okay, I think that is going to do it for this, our second live episode of Life After Health. Life After 55, Health, Wealth, and Headlines. Hopefully, it was helpful and it was informative for you as well. I hope. Okay. And before we wrap up tonight, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for spending part of your evening with me. Whether you watch this live, whether you caught the replay, or whether you found this weeks from now, I truly appreciate you being here. This channel is still growing, and Life After 55 is meant to be a calm place, a place where we slow things down, we talk honestly, And we try to make sense of health, money, and the headlines without fear or pressure. So, if tonight's conversation helped you in any way, I would really appreciate it if you take a second to like the video. If you have a thought, a question, or even just a, hey, this sounds familiar, feel free to leave a comment. I do read them. And, even if you don't have a question or anything, leave a comment anyways. Leave a comment saying, hey, I listened to it for a minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 60 minutes, whatever. And I'm listening from Alabama. I'm listening from Canada. I'm listening from wherever you're listening from. I'd appreciate that. Okay. And if you haven't already, I do hope that you will subscribe and that you will follow this channel so you don't miss any future episodes. Also, on a similar note, hang on one second. On a similar note, um, I'm also starting to build out our social pages. Well, me and other people that I have working here with me. So I should say we are starting to build out our social pages so people can find us in more than just one place here. And another reason for that is people have told me in the past when we were just doing the videos that if I was to do a live thing, can I do it on like Facebook and other places other than YouTube because they aren't that comfortable with YouTube. They're more comfortable on Facebook, which I want to do. So, you can follow the Life After 55 Facebook page at, and I am going to put that on the screen now. That is the address for the Life After 55 Facebook page. So if you go there and like the page or follow it, I don't know how that works. I know in order for us to broadcast live over there, which is the ultimate goal, what we're trying to achieve over there, we need 100 followers, a minimum of 100 followers on that page. So if in fact you would prefer to watch this over on Facebook rather than here on YouTube, by all means, go over there to this address that you see right here and follow the page. We need followers. Okay. So that's our Facebook page. We are also on we are on X, which is formerly Twitter. And we have a page there too, and that's our page over on X. I lost my train of thought there for a second. See, I have brain fog too. And I'm even talking about it. That should make you feel better, right? Okay, no. So, anyways, that was our let me just show you that one more time. That's our X channel, and it's at Life After 55 Live, all one word. And also follow us on those pages, either the Facebook page or the X page, or both pages if you want. But I will be announcing things on that page, future episodes, things of interest in the meantime between now and then, and anything that I think you might find interesting. Okay. All right. So we got that. And following there too, it helps the channel grow and it lets more people find these conversations when they need them. And if and another thing I wanted to mention before we go, and I'm looking over there at the timer. I've only got a few minutes left, so I gotta hurry up. Also, if you are a female between the ages of 40 and 65, and if you would like to become a co-host on this show, please reach out to us at Life After 55 channel at gmail.com. And again, I think I have that. Yes, I do. There's that. That's our email address. So, I'm gonna put that in the comments too, so you have that. But again, if you are a female between 40 and 65 and would like to be a co-host, we are looking for a female co-host on this show. You've seen this episode. Look at the first episode so you see what it's like. You don't have to be a movie star or anything like that to do this. But the general consensus is if we had a female co-host, things would go a lot better, and blah blah blah. So whatever, and it's a paid gig too. So if you are interested, email us at that email address. Okay, and then too, another thing is if you are somebody who feels you have something you'd like to contribute to the show that, perhaps I haven't spoken of or you haven't heard of that you would like to or that you would like to share with people, we are also looking for guests for the show. So again, email us at that email address and let us know. And we would be more than happy to have you on as a guest in a future episode. Okay? Um, all right. So that's that. So let me get rid of that now. And I probably should have left that up there, but I'll put the email address in the comments. Okay. Now, just so you know what's coming next, we are going to be back live again for episode 3 of our live stream. Now, again, we've done 20 or so videos prior to these 2 or 3 live streams. This is the third episode of the live stream, I guess, chapter of this program. But anyways, that is going to happen on Tuesday, February the 3rd, 2026 at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And just so you know, we do this show every other Tuesday. And it's at 7 p.m. Eastern time every other Tuesday. So again, the next one is the 3rd. The one after that will be on the 17th of February. So, um, you know, keep that in mind. And, and also we will be mentioning when we're going live a few days ahead of time on both the Facebook page and on the X page. So we're going to continue building on the same themes, health, wealth, and headlines after 55. And I will share more details about that episode, meaning episode 3, again on the Facebook page and on the X page. So if tonight was helpful, I hope you will join me again on February 3rd at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Okay. Okay. That should do it. I think I covered everything. I think I did this without messing it up this time. Again, thank you, thank you, thank you for spending time here watching this. Please like, follow, comment. All of those things help the channel grow. We're trying to help people with like what we did tonight with taxes, with money things, with health things, and we tend to go with natural remedies as opposed to big pharma solutions. Like, again, if you've watched any of the videos I've done in the past, I'm not that thrilled with big pharma because to me, I believe that big pharma doesn't do anything to cure anybody. They're basically doing things to manage your condition, whatever that might be, so that they can keep making money. If they cure you, they're not going to make any money. So that's kind of my take on big pharma. And I know there is there is a place for pharmaceuticals. Yes, I know that, and I get that. When it's necessary, I don't, it's not like I'm crazy and I'm like, nope, no way. Yeah, if you need it and it's legit, yeah, okay, I see it, but not for everything. Just me. Anyhow, until next time, take care of yourself. Um, let me see. Yeah, I mean, take care of yourself, take things one step at a time, and remember, um, clarity doesn't come from rushing. It comes from understanding. All right? Um, uh, thank you again for being here. Good night, and hopefully I will see you all February the 3rd. See you then.